Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is going to focus on equity within the context of pedestrian and bicycle planning. It's a very important topic, and I'm really glad that you all took some time out of your day to join us. I think we've got a great presentation planned, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of our panelists. My name is Dan Jolene, and I will be facilitating the webinar today. We are joined by several panelists this afternoon, and I want to introduce each of them now. Sherry Shaflin works in the Federal Highway Administration's Office of Human Environment. She'll be sharing some information about work that the Federal Highway Administration is doing to promote equity and ladders of opportunity within the context of pedestrian and bicycle planning. Joyce Newland is with the Federal Highway Administration's Indiana Division Office, and we'll be talking specifically about some pedestrian and bicycle assessments that were conducted in Indiana. Cara Ferrantino and Carnisha Kwashi with the City of Philadelphia will be discussing equity in the context of their bike share program there. And then finally, Emily Sinkhorn with the Redwood Community Action Agency will be talking about some efforts to improve equity in transportation decision-making in Humboldt County, California. We're thrilled to have all of these panelists here with us today, and we're very much looking forward to the presentations and subsequent discussion. I would just briefly like to shift gears and talk through a few housekeeping items before we get started. Attendees, I'll ask you, if you can hear me, please click the hand icon that's located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, which will let us know that the webinar is working and that you can hear us. So I'll take a moment to check the list and see if I can see hands going up. I certainly do. Great. I'm glad you all can hear us. I'm so glad you're here today. This is a really important topic, and I'm glad you're able to join us for it. If for any reason during the program your computer freezes, I'd encourage you to please just reload the website and log back into the program, and you should be able to just rejoin the session. We'll be posting the presentation slides and a recording of the webinar to the BVIC website, so you will be able to look back at anything that you miss. The presentation slides will be available, actually they're available now. If you go to our website, I'll send out a link shortly. The video archive of the session should be available within 1 to 2 more days. Please note that attendees won't be able to speak during the webinar, although you will have the ability to submit your questions and comments using the chat function. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. We'll be holding about 20 to 30 minutes at the end for a discussion session with our panelists. Later today, you'll be receiving a follow-up email from the UNC Highway Safety Research Center with a link that will allow you to generate a certificate of attendance for the webinar. If you're attending the webinar with multiple attendees at your site, please just make sure to forward that email to each of them so that they can also produce a certificate of attendance. The email will also contain the link to the website where we've already posted the presentation materials from today's webinar, and then in a couple of days it will also feature the video recording of this session. This webinar has been approved by the American Planning Association for 1.5 CM credits. I'd encourage you to please check the online AICP event calendar for more information about those. Finally, if you want to learn more about PBIC webinars or check out our past webinars, you can do so by visiting info.org. I've also got some links here where you can find out what other things are going on with PBIC on our Facebook page, and also to sign up for our newsletter so you can get alerts when we do set up future webinars. Before we start the feature presentation, I would like to take a quick poll from the audience. Please let us know how many participants are viewing from your location. So some of you may just be joining on your own at your computer. Others may be joined by a colleague or two. You may also have a larger group, 4, 5, 6, or 7, or 8 or more people. We just want to get a better handle on how many people are out there today. So if you could take maybe 15 more seconds and cast your vote, we'll go ahead and move right along into our main presentation. Okay, just a bit more time on the poll before we close that up and move right along. Okay, well, thanks so much, everybody, for providing that information. It's very helpful to us. We'll go ahead and close the poll now. And I want to start things off here by just mentioning a white paper that you may or may not have already read. This is a paper that was released just this past spring called Pursuing Equity in Pedestrian and Bicycle Planning, the title of this webinar. And what we wanted to do with this paper is really provide a few things. One is to really define the topic of equity in the context of transportation. Equity is a wide-ranging topic with many different factors and many different influences and topic areas, but for this area specifically, transportation and pedestrian and bicycle planning in particular, we wanted to provide some context for that. We also wanted to summarize research on meeting the needs, the transportation needs of populations that have been traditionally underserved, and some of those that we reach out to specifically and think through when we talk about equity in the planning process. And then finally, we wanted to share some strategies, practices, and resources that can address these inequities and really seek to level the playing field, improve conditions for all users, and meet the needs of all those who rely on our transportation system. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the paper. You can download it from the Federal Highway Administration's website. I've put the link here on the bottom of the page, and I'll also send that out in the chat pod during the webinar so you can have access to that. But it provides a really good context for what you need to consider when talking about equity in the pedestrian and bicycle planning context. So with that, I'll turn things over now to Sherry Chaplin of the Federal Highway Administration to continue the presentation. Sherry?
Thanks, Dan. I first want to thank the authors of the paper, Laura Sant, Tabitha Combs, Jesse Cohn, and PBIC for compiling the material. It really is designed to serve as a foundation to help all the practitioners that are involved in trying to weave together these topics of equity and planning and bicycle and pedestrian improvements, build their capacity to do what they do better, and kind of weave the worlds of civil rights and environmental justice and equity together with the technicians that are involved in bike and pedestrian planning. So I really hope folks get a chance to read it and share it with your colleagues and have a conversation about it. Today's set of presentations will really be applied efforts, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about how the context for this product fits. It was very deliberate that we put this together at this time. Our Federal Highways Headquarters, Resource Center, Division Office have all rising to the occasion to demonstrate national leadership to respond to the national demand for improved bike and facilities for all users. And as all the local, state, and federal investments increase, it is absolutely critical that on day one, as we really try to build these bike and pedestrian networks, that we are starting from an equity lens in distributing investments and allocating projects. Next slide. The areas that I want to cover are with ladders of opportunity, talk about a little bit our work in ladders of opportunity, recent and upcoming pedestrian and bicycle resources, and environmental justice, civil rights, and equity resources that are underway. And Dan, do you have these slides?
Yes, are you seeing it? I'm on the context slide now.
No, I'm not seeing them.
Not seeing them.
Okay, let's try it now.
Okay, maybe if you could just go back to the back slide one.
Here we go.
So that's the cover and the authors, and then these are the three areas we're going to cover here real quickly. Okay, Dan, next. So I hope folks have heard the Secretary's really big initiative called Ladders of Opportunity to really increase the national dialogue, to get us to think about where our transportation investments are occurring, and as we think about reconnecting communities and thinking about disadvantaged communities, how can we think about those resources really providing opportunities for folks? That really transportation is foundational to being able to access jobs and education and other essential services. And so the first two bullets are really emphasize that that's an angle that we need to be looking at our transportation investments. And the bottom two bullets are really looking at the increase in public involvement and moving beyond kind of our desktop planning and looking at data and really getting granular with the meaningful community engagement and involvement that will help pinpoint where those investments will do the most for communities as we really try to address inequality and the income differences in our country. Next slide. There are three really key elements of this to revitalize a community. A lot of our big investments, transit, bike ped, reconstructed highways, really provide that great opportunity to right past wrongs and really leverage investments in that community and really revitalize an area and provide that access to all the essential services. But there's also an angle of work involved here in that we really want to make sure there's an economic development for the community and access to jobs and job training for those transportation investment and dollars. Next slide. The latter step is one of the applied projects that have been underway where we've worked with 7 cities. It's been led by mayors in cooperation with FTA, and the transformative projects that the mayors picked were typically a transit project, and we worked with FTA and the local folks as well as national folks that we could bring to bear on the projects. One of the great things Federal Highways and USDOT can do is convene volunteer resources, professional resources, association resources, nonprofits to really answer the needs that the locals have with their transportation investment. And a lot of that has happened in this last administration under a variety of place-based efforts with not only us, but HUD and EPA. This particular effort, I wanted to highlight one in Richmond that's going to get underway, where a new BRT line is going in, Bus Rapid Transit line, and we're going to be working with FTA and the local folks to really do a really good bicycle and pedestrian access assessment to those new BRT stops, with a particular emphasis in reconnecting disadvantaged neighborhoods. So with those stops, we'll provide access for folks to get into those neighborhoods, maybe do revitalization within the neighborhood, and then people in those neighborhoods can get out, use the BRT through improved bike ped access to those stations, and really improve the entire system for everyone. Next slide. The other area that we've really emphasized is Safer People, Safer Streets, Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Initiative that the Secretary's Office has also advanced. Over 240 mayors have volunteered for this effort, and we'll be wrapping up and sharing a lot of their great practices at a big event here in the fall, and there's been an award solicitation that's been out recently on this. And we'll talk a little bit today about road safety assessments. That's really getting down at the local level, an exercise we did in all 50 states to identify a place, bring a lot of stakeholders together, and identify any bike and pedestrian safety or connectivity improvements that might be needed. FTA is highly involved in this. They're in the process of developing a guidebook that helps you connect better bicycle and pedestrian connection to transit stops, and that's in production right now. Next slide. We just recently completed 4 design charrettes, 2-day design charrettes that folks won through a national competition of where highways bifurcating a community from past investments, and how could we bring the community and some design experts together to very quickly work with the community, come up with some good ideas that will help them be successful as they get into the federal planning process and compete for funds at their local and state level. And all of the projects that were applied all had bike and pedestrian elements to it, and they had to be in areas that were in disadvantaged communities. So there's a lot of rich material and a lot of need out there to try to support with technical assistance and follow-up resources that our divisions will be working on. But I would encourage folks to look at the Secretary's blog of recent on this topic and see the kinds of things that are going on with Every Place Counts Design Challenge. Next slide. As many folks have heard me and my staff and other federal highways describe in our many webinars over the past couple of years, this is the foundational policy statement that we are working on and promoting. And really the bottom line relative to equity is the bottom bullet on providing safe and convenient facilities for bicycle and pedestrian modes. And I think we'll have speakers later today that will really emphasize if we do that, then we are providing access to everyone and making it comfortable for new people to get out in disadvantaged areas and feel safe and comfortable using our new facilities. But this policy intersected with all of our policies on environmental justice, health, civil rights, and equity is really the intersection we're talking about today. And for the next slide, I want to emphasize the all users. The way we get at that is combining these policies. We've made a lot of progress with sustainability, getting folks to think about the environmental, the financial life cycle cost of our investments. We're moving into the resiliency relative to climate change. We've been working with our infrastructure office, and you've seen a lot of memos that have changed our emphasis on design flexibility and the design controlling criteria so that we can figure out how to build these facilities in an already built environment, and a whole lot of work on bicycle and pedestrian networks, getting people where they need to get to. And then trying to level the playing field of pedestrian and bicycle data so that we are competing well with the rest of the data coming in performance measures and in planning and in modeling and in trying to figure out mode shift and mode shift improvements. And at the end of the day, that we are really focusing on quality of life and livability, and that this transportation set of investments and the intermodal thinking that we've applied and invested in is providing a higher quality of life, and we're not kind of admiring our shiny new transportation object in and of itself, but in the system that it provides. And the next slide real quick. We have produced a number of recent pedestrian and bicycle resources, and these are the covers, and I hope everyone's trained really well to go to the PBIC site or the Federal Highway site to access all the things coming out of our office and the safety office, progress through our MUTCD efforts, NHTSA, Office of the Secretary, etc. All of these resources that are new have tried to build in equity and support ladders of opportunity. For example, the Separated Bike Lane Planning and Design Guide emphasizes equity and public engagement in the planning process, and the Guidebook for Developing Pedestrian and Bicycle Performance Measures highlights measures that impact equity, such as access to community destinations, access to jobs, job creation, physical activity and health, and population served by walking, biking, or transit, and transportation disadvantaged population served. So there's a lot of good resources and a lot of good material here that we hope that you all are using. We have some upcoming materials per the next slide. We recognize that as more separated bike lanes, more bike lanes are going in, that it is creating some conflict points as we squeeze these facilities into our built environment. So we've got a product coming out on applying design flexibility and reducing conflicts. We also have a product on multimodal networks for small town and rural communities, recognizing and taking a lot of this material from these previous documents and synthesizing it and customizing it to support not only big urban areas but also small towns. And then finally, really a premier piece coming out is the Strategic Action Agenda for Pedestrian and Bicycle Transportation, where we are trying to synthesize all the work we're doing and others are doing, and have interviewed lots of folks to look at what 3 to 5 years is going to look like for where we and others could be putting our time and resources to continue advancing bike and pedestrian networks. And one of the 4 goals in that draft strategic agenda is equity. So we will stay tuned for more on that. And finally, to complement all these activities, I want to focus people on our environmental justice activities with the next slide. If you spend the predominant amount of your time in the ped bike planning world or technical world, I would really encourage you to spend some time exploring all the resources that are out there on environmental justice, civil rights, and equity. And this is work that DOT is doing, Federal Highways is doing, FTA is doing, to peruse some of those resources, familiarize yourself with them, and it's our professional job to be weaving those together in an applied way now and in the future. And I'll put a a web link, a email address up. I want to emphasize this DOT Citizen Academy that the Office of the Secretary is working on right now. We've gotten pretty good at helping practitioners think about, plan for, and conduct public involvement and public engagement, but we haven't really done a good job of really packaging this complex world of transportation planning for citizens. So the Secretary is very intent that while we've built all these activities and resources you're hearing about today, that we turn our attention towards really packaging things that help citizens engage in all of our processes so that their voice can be heard to implement the ladder's outcome and equity outcomes. So stay tuned for that, and there'll be something in the chat pod on that. And then the next slide just shows a couple of the recently developed products that I would point you to first. And really a quick one would be the Environmental Justice Reference Guide. It's a great overview to get you oriented, and then you can kind of dive deeper into the rest of the products. And on the right-hand column, you'll see things that are underway. A big effort with AASHTO, the 50 states, and the Center for Environmental Excellence to put together a strategic roadmap. And we are looking to update our Community Impact Assessment Guidebook with all the new methods and processes that we think will help people better understand communities and apply that information to any transportation planning that goes on. And if you're trying to do analysis work, stay tuned for our EJ Screening Tools Peer Network Summary Report. We've been working with a group of volunteers of NPOs and states to look at analytical methods and how to improve them and what's being used these days. So to close, I want to highlight 4 of my staff that I really encourage you to coordinate and contact on any of these topic areas, and they can put you in touch with more details and/or get you involved in all the activities going on. And now to pass off to the next speaker, I really want to emphasize the work that our divisions have been doing with the next slide. We have hosted in, Dan, can you move it to the next slide?
There we go.
Our divisions hosted a bicycle and safety audit, an assessment in every state and DC and Puerto Rico, and one of the best events, in part because it had a strong equity focus, was the assessment done in Gary, Indiana, and that's the folks in the center picture. Joyce Newland in our FHWA Indiana division is going to talk about this assessment and other work they're doing to promote equity ladders and multimodal transportation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and turn things right over to Joyce. Joyce, keep an eye on your screen. You should get an alert to take over and show your screen, and if you go into your presentation, we should be able to see it.
I did click it.
I see your desktop right now, Joyce. Switch monitors. There we go. All set.
Okay. All right. As Sherry said, I'm Joyce Newland. I'm a planning and environmental specialist with FHWA here in the Indiana Division Office. I'm also the pedestrian and bicycle point of contact. Also, too, as Sherry mentioned, Secretary Fox is a big believer of complete streets, and he gave a challenge to the U.S. DOT modal agencies to lead a pedestrian and bicycle safety assessment in each state by June of 2015. And we were the modal agency. We were the lead for that initiative here in Indiana. And so, so the purpose of these assessments were to get the transportation decision makers out in the field to experience the transportation system from the perspective of those who use it to walk and to bike to places. And our role was to encourage relationship building between the stakeholders that share the responsibility for creating safer streets, and to engage the practitioners like the design engineers, the planners, the traffic engineers, who traditionally have not focused on pedestrian safety as much, and to find locations that have non-motorized challenges in the planning process. So our initial assessment was held in Gary, Indiana, and it was selected because it had multimodal transportation opportunities from heavy truck corridors, railroads, commuter rail, transit systems, and highways. It was also close to our U.S. DOT modal partners, FTA, FRA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, who all operate out of the Chicago region. Plus, we could leverage on plans to improve the Gary community through the following initiatives. There's a big federal initiative going on in Gary. We have the EPA HUD Partnership for Sustainable Communities, Strong City, Strong Communities Initiative, which is out of the White House, and the Livable Broadway Corridor, which is sponsored by the Gary Public Transportation Corporation, the transit system there. So Gary was designated a Strong Cities, Strong Communities, SC2 designation in January of 2014. And so there was a symposium that was sponsored by the White House on the SC2, and it was attended by the HUD, EPA, the MPO for the area, which is the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, NERPC, and the City of Gary. And so the symposium provided several case studies on how to coordinate economic development, transportation, public health, housing, environmental, and community development strategies that could improve the quality of life in neighborhoods through a series of focused panels and work sessions. So when the bike and pedestrian assessments came up, we just thought this was a great opportunity to go ahead and build upon these partners that were already there and that we were already working with, and to include them in this initiative. So our division administrator at the time was Rick Markey, and he met with Karen, the mayor, Karen Freeman Wilson, about selecting the locations for the assessments. And so she chose 3 initiatives that were going on. It was the Gary Northside Revitalization Project, which consists of 2 components, a downtown center along 4th and 5th Avenues, and it's also a state highway, US 1220, and it operates as one-way pairs, and it's very heavily trafficked by trucks and vehicles, and it's an east-west corridor. And then there's the lakefront corridors along US 20 and 12, and a north corridor called Lake Street, which leads up to Lake Michigan. And then she also chose the Gary Public Transportation's Livable Broadway plan, which seeks to make Broadway Avenue a more livable corridor. And so this plan has a vision for transit to support, development in this area. Broadway is the north-south spine, if you will, of the city. It's also another state highway, State Road 53, and as it would happen, the state had a transportation project in the works. So it's scheduled for construction in 2017. So here are those corridors that I was kind of talking about. This is the east-west one. These are the one-way pairs. This is the Broadway corridor. This is the lakefront development areas, these 2 right here. And so when we all met, when the stakeholders got together, one thing we also noticed was that the data, I'll show that in a second, it was really heavily, the crashes were really pedestrian related, and we did have some, a good amount of bicycle crashes. So it was recommended that we add a bicycle assessment in the southern part of the city right here. And it actually is in between 2 universities or 2 schools, the IU Northwest and Ivy Tech. Right at that time, Gary had received a HUD Choice neighborhood planning grant for the University Park neighborhood. And this, again, is part of Obama's administration's effort to build ladders of opportunity to help these neighborhoods craft comprehensive and locally driven plans to revitalize their neighborhoods. So these 4 corridors were selected, and the steering committee was really great because we had several Gary department heads, the NDOT engineers, the MPO was definitely represented, as was the transit planner, EPA HUD, and advocacy groups for walking. So on this map, you'll see the squares are the crashes. This map was put together by NERPC, and thank you very much, because I don't have that capability. And they were able to put these on here, and this is based on 10 years of crash data. And so when we did finally have our event, you can see this is all the planning partners and stakeholders and participants that came out. Imagine you get these and you can take a look at that slide, but we had a pretty good representation. So not too long ago, I heard somebody say recently that you just never know when you might encounter mobility needs, and that was indeed the case for our division administrator, who had just injured his knees and was experiencing firsthand the mobility challenges of accessing buildings and sidewalks. So this is the livable Broadway corridor, or State Road 53. And over here is some of the schematics, if you will, from the plan. And that just kind of shows you how large the corridor is. It actually goes from Gary on down to almost Crown Point, Indiana. But we just kind of focused to about right here where it's the university. So we have a real large area. And this area was broken into 2 groups. And so, and this is also the corridor that NDOT has the road improvement on. You can see here in these pictures, I mean, the pavement's bad. Over here on the side, while there's accessibility, the curb here is going to be a barrier for folks in wheelchairs. And then, we have these light standards and waste baskets in the way. As you come down further in this corridor, the flashers for the railroad crossing, we also had FRA, and they were examining these railroad crossings, and those should be positioned more towards the pedestrians. The railroad signs were found where there were no railroad signs, crossing signs for either the pedestrians or the vehicles as they approached. They were just nothing was there. And then, of course, the railroad crossings were not ADA compliant. It's really a big gap right there, a dip. So just some more. Now, this corridor could accommodate bicycle lanes, and that was one of the recommendations of this assessment. But I don't think Gary has a bike plan, indicating for trails up this corridor. But what was really notable, I felt, out of this corridor, or this assessment, was that the project engineer and the designer for the project, they were both there, as well as the Gary Public Transit Coordinator, and then, of course, you saw the folks with the disabilities and several other agencies. And it really helped. It was what I understood from the comments in the report out was that it really helped them see the challenges, the designer and the managers see the challenges that the folks with disabilities encounter. So NDOT has been really terrific. They've been working with the Gary Public Transportation Corridor in this with their project, and they're going to go ahead and put in bus pull-ins and outs, and they're going to put in the traffic control cabinets for when the transit gets the preemptive technology for their buses. And Gary Public Transit is also wanting to make this into a bus rapid transit, or kind of a bus rapid transit light corridor. So, and not too long after this, we had this bicycle assessment. It was very interesting that one of the participants in it came back to me and told me that on another project they started talking about how to start incorporating bike and ped into other projects. So that was just really great. Here's one of the lakefront corridors that I had that was also recommended. A lot of development is really starting to happen over in this area. Gary wants NDOT to relinquish US 12 in order for NICD, which is the South Shore, it's a commuter rail train, to come through this corridor. They would like to straighten out kind of a curve in this track, and they would like to turn this into transit-oriented development and light industrial type of businesses through this corridor. And this corridor, EPA and HUD, the sustainability grants and DOT have been working with Gary on this, and they submitted this as a Tiger grant in 2015, I believe it was, 2015, and they actually used some of the data that we had from the bicycle corridors in their application. They didn't get it, unfortunately, but this didn't stop them. Here's kind of the plans, the schematic, if you will, for that corridor that they would like to redevelop. I don't mean to go too fast, but as you can see, they want to reroute US 12, and they will actually bring that from here to down here and bring it up along here. And NICD, the commuter rail, was actually able to secure funding through another grant, and right now it escapes me. I think it was like some type of rail capacity expansion. But anyway, so they are on their way, and NDOT is working with them and is looking to vacate this and relocate it. So that's here's another part of that schematic. So one more little bit on the Gary Bike pedestrian assessment. As I mentioned, that HUD had given a neighborhood choice grant, and they have actually now completed that work in March of this year. They looked at this whole neighborhood down in here. This is the University Park East area. As I mentioned, there's IU Northwest here, and then there's Ivy Tech College here. You can see this is the parking lot for Ivy Tech, but they have to cross over here, but there's no indication of what you could do. The streets are pretty wide, so one of the things was the assessment recommended is that bike lanes could be put in. Well, in their summary of their existing conditions report, they actually listed and cited our bicycle assessment in there, as well as the Broadway livable corridor, because that does come right down this corridor. Broadway does come right down here, so that's a great connection. It's one way. All right, so that was in 2015, and we did another one this year in South Bend, Indiana, and South Bend was chosen mainly because, well, not mainly, but they're very much pro livability, and the MPO is very strong up there and works with all its communities. And actually, I have to thank the MPO. They were quite the cog on this assessment, and that's the Michiana Area Council of Governments. So anyway, the mayor, he is a big fan of complete streets, and they were able to get the city of South Bend to pass a street policy ordinance last November. And the National Complete Street Association or organization, they rank complete streets or complete street policies every year. And in 2015, South Bend was ranked 3rd for having its policy, which highlights performance measures and interdepartmental advisory team as part of their policy. So good job. So anyway, we again looked at several corridors. These are the little marks here are all the crashes from bike and peds and bike crashes. There were again a lot of corridors. We did about 10 of them with again a large range of group of folks. pretty much everybody, except this time we didn't have the HUD, have HUD and EPA. We had national, NHTSA, we had NHTSA. So I guess I had that twice. So anyway, here's one of the corridors right here. This is actually a project that's just went through the road diets, and it's been restriped now from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and you have the sidewalks. And so the bus is still coming into this lane, but I think that's all right. But I'm not positive about that. But anyway, then they've put in some bike lanes here, and with giving it the green box for the dedication. And then here's one on Olive Street, and this is out by the Amtrak station. And what was interesting about this, and I'm sorry I squished this picture down, but at the railroad crossings, you had sidewalks, but then they just totally disappeared, and they were just non-existent through here. There was bike lanes in this area, and then there was another group that looked at this. They took off from about right this way. And another group came right here and looked at the needs through here, and the bike lanes are in here. But at this intersection, some of the improvements were just, they weren't all ADA compliant. Our FTA partner, Susan Arona, she brought her mother's walker out with her, and she experienced the difficulties to maneuver some of these sidewalks, and found that it wasn't easy. So now this slide is a little hard, but I just kind of wanted to, again, just tell you guys that, share with you that South Bend is really busy converting a lot of the one-way streets, one way in and one way out, and now they're converting them back to two-way streets, and they're building a lot of roundabouts, and they're really incorporating sidewalks and bike lanes into their designs and making their downtown look a lot friendlier. And they are really starting to attract a lot of housing and new businesses because of these improvements. And so with that, this is what one of their bridges looks like at downtown at nighttime, and that's the lighting of the Riverwalk. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Joyce. That was a great look at some really in-depth assessments that you all did. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. We're going to move right along to Kara and Karnisha's presentation. So if you all could take a look at your screen, you should be getting an alert to take over and display your slides, and we'll go right ahead. Okay, very good.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara Ferrantino.
Good afternoon. This is Karnisha Kwashi.
And we are part of the bike share team at the City of Philadelphia, and we are really pleased for the opportunity to share with you some of our reflections on embedding equity into Indego, which is the City of Philadelphia's bike share program. And so what we would like to do with our time is set the stage with some context for Indego, then dive into two of what we think are the most important components of our work in this arena, which are related to station site planning, and then the work related to engagement and partnerships with our communities. So I'll get started with some of the context, just to give you an idea of the City of Philadelphia. We are a large city, 1.5 million residents. We are a poor city. We have over a quarter of our households living at or below the poverty line. We are also a very diverse city, as you can see from the demographics up on the slide. And the City of Philadelphia, just some basics on the City of Philadelphia's Indego system are that the program is about a year and a few months old. We launched April 2015. We are, the program is owned by the City of Philadelphia. All the stations and bikes are city-owned. It is privately operated through a contract. And right now we have 100 stations and 1,000 bikes. And around a third of those stations are located in census blocks where a majority of households live at or below the poverty line. So that gives you a sense of our system. And of course, we have to think about as well related to context, what the city's goals were in launching Indego, and really think that our work begins here, because from the beginning, the city in launching bike share as a new form of public transportation. So goal number one, why do cities launch bike share? And in addition to the fact that often, a mayor or an elected official is interested in it. Well, why does the city do this? Well, we're trying to provide a new, affordable, convenient option for moving around the city for transportation purposes. And over time we have, and we'll get to this a little bit later, evolved that goal to include fitness and fun. From the beginning, we have had the goal of using bike share to improve access to transit and community resources, with a special focus on libraries, schools, parks, food, grocery stores, and recreation centers. And then directly tied to our deeper equity goals are, we from the beginning have had as a mission to ensure that such a major public investment in new transportation would be set up to benefit as many Philadelphians as possible, particularly disadvantaged communities. And really, one of the ways we think about this goal is through the idea that bike share should represent the diversity of our city, such that all Philadelphians, as long as you're the legal age to ride a bike, which is over 16, but really all Philadelphians think that bike share is for me. It's not for other people. It's not for people in just some kinds of neighborhoods. It's for me. It's for everyone. And of course, when we have those as our goals, there are a few immediate challenges, a few barriers we can think about to achieving, and in particular, the equity goals. So we think about physical access. I mean, the ability to say yes, bike share is for me, requires that you can really say yes to the questions that we have on this page here. And we have to think through the implications of that. And so, for example, on the access side, are there even stations in my neighborhood? Can I afford a membership? Can I pay for a membership, or do I need to have, will the payment process itself form a barrier? Do I even know how to ride a bike? Can I even take advantage of this new opportunity by virtue of where I'm coming from as a cyclist? Can I understand how the program is described? Is the program described either in my language or in plain English, which is something we have to keep in mind since Philadelphia's reading level is an average on the 6th grade. Then, of course, we have to think about whether bike share will work for people. Is bike share able to take me where I need to go? And then there's a whole factor around desirability. Do I feel safe at riding bikes? Do I feel safe at stations? And then again, those questions of, is bike share for me? Do I see my peers and role models using the system? Did I feel included in the bike share outreach process and site planning process? And is biking a respected activity in my community? So we have, and what we will talk about in the remaining segment is really how we try to break down as many of these barriers as possible. And a lot of them do begin with site planning. And so our goal has been to make sure that from the beginning, where stations are can set up our success in many other areas. And this, to be totally honest, this approach has definitely evolved over time. We did not begin with the same understanding of the site planning process when we first started bike share, the bike share planning process over 2 years ago. But so what you see here really reflects our current assumptions about the process, which is that you need to go in with the goal of building community ownership over bike share, and not, of course, not to say that anyone will ever own these stations other than the city of Philadelphia, but with the goal of saying that a neighborhood, every neighborhood will get to say those are our stations, versus something that the city just plunked in, or again, something that is for other people. So in order to do this, we believe you have to do several things, including one, doing your research, understanding local context, talking to as many. We always do a lot of research, talking to as many folks as we can about particular areas, particular community leaders, particular challenges, and use that step to build into our second key component, which is starting to build relationships on the ground with community members, community leaders, to begin with an understanding that bike share may sound like just another thing that wasn't asked for, instead of an opportunity to help support what a community's goals may be. So this is directly tied to building trust and building an understanding of the program, as well as the understanding from our program perspective as program managers, what the particular transportation or recreation or fitness needs might be. In other words, what we go into conversations saying, this is what bike share is, what are your needs as a community, and then how could bike share help you with them? So and I mentioned this earlier, but and we're with the city, we're in the transportation office, in the Office of Transportation Infrastructure Systems. Our assumption going in was very much about how bike share's value was going to be in terms of transportation purposes. And of course, many people tell us through the course of our site plan engagement that the real value is related to recreation and really spending time with family and friends. And so we have to be responsive to that and how we adjust stations accordingly. Related to seeking to understand community needs and where bike share fits in, we fold in input on potential station locations, so directly tied to, I would love to use bike share for exercise in a park. Getting input on where a station might be directly related to help serve that purpose. And we gather input on station locations from community members in a number of formats, usually community meetings or sometimes smaller meetings with community leaders, often through site visits directly with community leaders, just having them show us parts of the neighborhood that they think would make the most sense. Then go and having that opportunity for them to then say, knock on the door of the neighbor and introduce us and get to talk about the program or make a connection to a community partner right on the spot. So that's been tremendously valuable. And of course, the site planning process requires lots of follow-up, lots of time and communication. And I don't want to, you can't, we don't underestimate the time that this takes. This takes a lot of time, but we have found it to produce what we think is a really good foundation for community ownership of stations. And our big picture lessons have really been in persistence, the importance of maximizing face time with community leaders, again, building trust, and really capitalizing on community existing knowledge. And I did, I haven't mentioned this photo looming at the bottom of the page. What it is it's a reference to a lesson learned for us. And this is an image showing basically a red sticker, a set of red stickers on the sidewalk that we put down in fall 2014. Asking, as you can see, we didn't have a name for Indego. It was just, is this a good spot for a Philly bike share station? Learn more here, text yes or no, and we thought this was a great way to sort of bridge the digital divide by having a text-based opportunity and having these stickers out at locations that were potentials. And what we realized was that this was not sufficient in reaching all communities. And a couple lessons learned. I mean, one, people weren't always looking down. One, but two, this requires that you already know what bike share is and have an idea of what value it might be to you and whether or not this would even be a good spot. I mean, so the assumptions there really skewed our results, and we ended up having to do much more kind of in-person outreach as a result of this effort not really reaching all, being as inclusive as we wanted to. So I just wanted to share that as a lesson learned.
Great. And so we're really thankful that we have had the opportunity to really test out strategies in terms of integrating socially equitable programs and practices into our bike share program here locally, as well as being able to be the grant lead on an initiative that is called the Better Bike Share Partnership, which is funded by the JPB Foundation and managed by the Mayor's Fund for Philadelphia on behalf of the City of Philadelphia. The goal of this multi-million-dollar national initiative is to develop replicable and socially equitable bike share models across the country. And so here in Philadelphia, we've had a lot of support in terms of the funding and the partnerships we've been able to build because of the Better Bike Share partnership. So in terms of the integration of social equity and really gaining an understanding of what works well and what we can improve on, a lot of credit is given to the Better Bike Share partnership funding and partnership through the JPB Foundation, which has made a lot of this possible. Again, it is a national initiative. We have two national partners, NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, as well as People for Bikes Foundation. And so NACTO is responsible for really assessing what folks have done across the country in their bike share programs and systems, and really collecting and disseminating short papers at this point on some best practices that are working, especially when you're trying to integrate bike share programs across the country with a social equity lens or focus. In order to do this, we have a challenge grant program which is managed by People for Bikes, in which to date we have awarded a total of 15 different cities with some funding that enables them to test out how to do ambassador programs to spread awareness and understand and identify barriers to underserved communities accessing bike share programs. Anything ranging from that to trying to develop subsidized programs to increase people's use or testing of the system. So we're really thankful for the funding that has been provided to us, and I would strongly encourage any of you who've not heard of us to check out betterbikeshare.org right there and see what we've been up to. It's a 3-year grant. Our grant period is scheduled to end June 30, 2017 for the majority of our work. But again, this is really the foundation of us being able to integrate and test out strategies. So a lot of credit is given to the people of Philadelphia in terms of how our system was designed through some preliminary focus group work that we did, where we interviewed 60 low-income individuals from what we call our phase one of the Indego Bike Share program, interviewing people in those neighborhoods in terms of, you know, timing of the system, which you see here. Folks said, if you want me to use the system, it needs to be 1 hour or more. So instead of a typical 30-minute checkout standard, we adopted a 1 hour based on the community members really having input there. Also, the pricing was determined by a lot of input from community members, what they were willing to pay versus what they were willing not to pay. And so you'll see here that it was ranging from $15 to $20, in which we settled at $15 during our initial launch of the bike share program. We have since made updates to reach individuals who are very, very low income or no income at all. The other thing that is was strongly impacted by the pre-launch focus group that we did in coordination with Temple University's Institute for Survey Research is how to develop marketing materials in which the folks this to appeal to me. You know, I need to see people who look like me in terms of race, gender, body type, size. So we've really made an effort here to diversify our marketing materials from the very beginning. And as Kara had mentioned earlier, although this is a transportation option, we're really interested in meeting people where they are. So our long-term goal is for this to be seen by the citizens and visitors of Philadelphia as a public transportation option, but we understand that during this infancy stage of the Indego Bike Share program, some folks may just strongly identify with it being a recreation option for now, and we have to be okay with that, with the understanding that they may find it to become more valuable to them in terms of other things they do in their life and other resources they need to access. So it's not just about transportation right now, it's about connecting people to their family or friends, and we're okay with that. Here's a sample of some of our marketing materials. We use real folks. We don't use models. So to the far left is one of our initial Indego community ambassadors through the Better Bike Share partnership. We've been able to have 2 community ambassador programs in which we have members who live within our underserved communities develop with us programs and events on behalf of the community in order for us to be able to let folks in the community know about what bike share is and how it can be of value. Again, Kara said that you can't just assume that everyone knows what bike share is or how to use it, and perception is really key. So some people may say that's not something for me. And so the reason why we have the ambassador program is to understand why people are saying things like that and to really try to develop some educational programs and events that encourage folks to explore that it is for you because it's a public transportation option. So you'll see here, these are direct quotes. This is from our Faces of Indego campaign. We're family, we ride together. That's Kim and her daughter, who is now 16 years of age and uses Indego herself. So we're really happy about that. And what it's also done, Kim and other Indego ambassadors like Kaola Harrington and Jasmine have cited is, hey, I saw you on that Indego ad. Tell me what that program's about. What's this whole bike share thing about? And so it has really given us an opportunity to have people speak on the behalf of the program in ways that we're not able to do all the time through a marketing team or what we have, which are called street team members in phase 2 of Indego. So it's been really important. These advertisements go on not only the bike share Indego stations, but on bus shelters as well as digital advertisement. So this is just an example. Having bilingual materials is really important as well because outside of English, Spanish is in this city the most popular language that is spoken from the people of Philadelphia at this point. So we are very sensitive to that and actually make sure that our materials are bilingual and created in Spanish as well at this point. So here is our pricing and timing structure. As mentioned, we have unlimited 1-hour trips, which was strongly influenced by the initial focus group that we did with folks who represent lower income communities. We have the unlimited 1-hour trips, which is $15 a month. This year we were very happy to launch the Indego 30 Access Pass, which is a $5 a month membership for folks who have a PA access card, which are the state's public benefits, similar to a food stamp card. We have had very positive results from that. We have, it has been, in terms of who we're trying to reach, very popular and attractive to folks of color, individuals who have an income of $35,000 or less, and the majority of those who've actually signed up for the membership at this point are women, which sometimes in the bike world is a male-dominated scene. So we're very happy to report that this model of the $5 a month for the PA access card holders is actually working for us in terms of diversifying who the pass holders and users of bike share systems in the country are. So again, bike share education and safety is a very huge component of what we do as well. We've partnered with the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia, who is also a grant subrecipient of the Better Bike Share Partnership. So we have one outreach manager, 2 community liaisons. We have street team members and community ambassadors who really help us to provide education and safety classes to our underserved communities as well as the general public because, some people don't know how to ride a bike. So let's lessen the barrier and make sure that we have educational resources and opportunities available for folks. So this is part of our ongoing effort. What we've learned in terms of program improvements is to standardize these educational classes and create them in both community and major hubs that a lot of people connect to, such as we've been timing ourselves, such as a library or local school or a local community organization. Make sure that you can provide classes regularly and often on a monthly basis so that people can access them when they're able to, so they can feel comfortable on the road. Partnerships are key. We have a very arts-focused portion of our program through the Better Bike Share Partnership, where we partnered with the City of Philadelphia's Mirror Arts Program, and we've also partnered with PowerCorps PHL for workforce development efforts. So, you know, although it's a transportation project, we really look at it from a holistic point of view and think about all of the people who are responsible for providing products and services to our citizens and how we can collaborate with them, align our goals, and make sure that we are accomplishing things together to better serve the people of this city. Here is an example of the partnerships that we've done. So in terms of the Indego ambassador, Anton Moore here, is the founder of Unity in the Community, and he uses bike share as a way to focus on his effort to reduce or prevent violence in his South Philadelphia neighborhood. And he does that through getting folks out on group rides, and we also sponsor events for him to educate the public about how bike share can be used as a tool, and it helps to support Anthony and other nonprofits in accomplishing their goals. So yes, bike share and violence prevention can work together well. It helps us to connect people, do something positive, while communicating a message that we're trying to reduce violence in our city. So these are creative ways in which we found bike share to be able to be used as a tool to serve the common and greater good. Okay, so here are a couple program stats. I'm going to turn it over to Kara. We'll run through these quickly.
So just wanted to highlight we're as I mentioned, Indego launched in April 2015. We've had 700,000 trips since then. We have around 7,000 pass holders, 170 pay in cash through a cash payment option. We helped, we set up to lessen credit card possession as a barrier. And as Karnisha was mentioning, our access program has been very successful. We've had 500 people sign up for Indego access cards in just the first 3 months since that program launched. And a few big picture reflections. We think that success in this realm depends on relationships, you know, those partnerships we've been mentioning. Really have partners do what they do best and finding the overlap. Stressing again that preparation and deliberation and site planning is key, avoidable missteps in terms of having a process that misses community inclusion. Other things we found to be really helpful are continuing to document and adjust strategies as we move forward to keep refining and learning these efforts, and always staying reflective about what more there is to do.
Yeah. And I would just say, add one more thing. We understand that we're human, so we also constantly build in professional development to work through our challenges, because we understand that racial equity is a major part of this conversation as well. So we do a lot of intense training to help us work through, build our trust as a team, and understand the individual and collective challenges we face as we implement this new bike share program.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much. We are going to turn things right over to our final presentation of the day, Emily Sinkhorn. Emily, just take a look at your screen. You should see an alert come across to take control and show your screen, and we should be good to go.
Great. Thank you. Well, yes, my name is Emily Sinkhorn, and I work with the Natural Resources Services Division of Redwood Community Action Agency in Humboldt County, California. And I'll be talking about a couple things today focused on how we are addressing transportation equity in Humboldt County, and in particular, 2 planning projects which utilize data to make the case to decision makers for where to focus funding and fund seeking for transportation safety improvements, and also a focus on reducing language barriers for more residents in Humboldt County to really fully participate in transportation decisions that affect their family. So Redwood Community Action Agency, or RCAA, is based in Eureka, and that is in Humboldt County in the far north coast of California. And our active living program works in a variety of modes to advance healthy communities through active transportation and community building projects. And our work really spans planning and education and encouragement programs, community organizing, but also on-the-ground implementation projects. So where is Humboldt County? We're located 5 hours north of San Francisco along the coast. We have areas of the county that are very rural, but also micro-urban centers like the county seat of Eureka and other smaller cities. And we have a very diverse population. Our population is about 134,000. Our median household income is definitely far below state average. And we also have 8 federally recognized tribes within the land base of Humboldt County. So why is transportation equity important in Humboldt? Well, as I said previously, many communities are relatively remote and really only connected by rural roadways. And these are also places where Main Street may be a current or a past state highway, which most were originally designed just to move vehicle traffic. And really also, contrary to popular belief, walking and biking really count as a significant means of transportation in many rural areas. And also, an ongoing concern is just dwindling funds for transportation improvements. And I really think this is even harder for unincorporated, rural, small communities to really realize improvements that they realize are needed. Also in Humboldt County, we have a lot of traffic safety concerns. So according to the California Office of Traffic Safety, Humboldt County has the highest rate of pedestrian-involved collisions of all California counties. And in particular, these collision rates are even higher in Indian country. So according to a study from UC Berkeley entitled Deadly Roads, 33 to 50% of all traffic fatalities in Humboldt County occur in these mostly rural tribal lands, even though this land base only accounts for about 25% of Humboldt County. And also, as Kara and Carnisha were mentioning, Humboldt County, like the rest of the country, is seeing a shift in demographics. And we recognize in Humboldt, we have a lot more people moving to Humboldt County whose primary language is not English. So first, I will talk about our Transportation Disadvantaged Populations Report, and then I'll get to a couple other things later. So this was a planning effort that was funded through our State Department of Transportation as an environmental justice planning grant. And we definitely had assistance with many project partners. But this was a large data gathering effort to map areas of the county with a specific need for equity-based transportation interventions. And so a key thing was the creation of easily digestible visual tools to convey information, really such as where in the county is it most difficult to get to where you need to go, where are bicycle and pedestrian involved collisions concentrated, and what are the demographics of those neighborhoods. And so this information really enabled the region to have more understanding, to prioritize investments based on need rather than just based on opportunity. So this report is included in the recent white paper that was mentioned at the start of this webinar. And although this report was completed in 2006, it really has helped us spur more focus on data and equity in transportation decisions here in Humboldt. And on the slide is a place where you can find this report. So this report really introduced to Humboldt County the concept of transportation disadvantaged populations. So that's the approximately 30% of the population who do not drive or cannot drive and really can get around only by an alternative to a personal vehicle. So as I said, this was a large data gathering effort. So data for a lot of the maps in this report were gathered from a variety of local sources, but we also really extensively utilized data available through the census. So this map in particular shows kind of a visual estimation of transportation disadvantage, with the darkest colors really representing the most disadvantaged. And what's most stark is in the northeast part of the county, particularly on the Huba and Yurok tribes reservation lands. You can tell that it is hard for people to get to where they need to go. And also can see around the central part of the county, there's some particularly dark areas around west side Eureka that we'll talk about in a second. So the purpose of these were really to show decision makers where in the county transportation improvements could have the greatest benefit to those that really need it the most. So then zooming into Eureka, this was also another tool that really was really helpful for decision makers to see this. This shows, the circles show bicycle and pedestrian involved collisions, and the colored polygons are census block groups by percentage of low-income households. And you can really tell that the vast majority of bicycle and pedestrian collisions are concentrated in North and West Eureka. And these are areas of Eureka that have a lot of multi-lane, one-way couplet streets that are hard to cross. And this is also where Highway 101 is a surface street through Eureka, and that really separates neighborhoods from many goods and services. So these hotspots in the maps were really used as preliminary indicators of areas to encourage prioritizing transportation investments. And these tools were and continue to be very helpful for making the case with decision makers. RCA and others have used these maps in policy discussions and decision making at our County Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission for a general plan update. And also within Eureka for advocating for completing gaps in our bike facility network. And it really also has spurred our organization to continue to utilize data to make the case for active transportation improvements. So I'll touch on the next one, which is really focusing on a Safe Routes to School effort. So Safe Routes to School, as many of you know, is a movement to get more people, get more kids walking and biking to school where it's safe to do so, and where it's not safe to make changes and improvements to reduce barriers so children can be physically active on the way to school. So Safe Routes to School utilizes the 7 E's strategies, and this project really allowed us to focus on the equity piece. So working in conjunction with our local transportation planning agency, the Humboldt County Association of Governments, and Ulta Planning and Design, we created a tool to help our county and cities select which schools in the county have the greatest need, capacity, and support for Safe Routes to School programs and infrastructure improvements. And so we really recognized there was a need and an interest to build capacity countywide for Safe Routes to School, but also there was a great need to ensure equity in which schools were pursued for improvement. You know, we really wanted to ensure that disadvantaged schools with a high need but maybe less resources were properly considered, instead of just the squeaky wheel getting the attention every time. So I'll share some of the elements of the guide that were most helpful to us, and also how the project has led to successes locally. So we really focused our prioritization tool based on 3 main categories, those being considering schools that were ready to take on Safe Routes to School programs, really looking at the internal need within schools based on free and reduced lunch statistics, aerobic fitness, and school enrollment, and also focused on external need, or what are the conditions right outside the school's doors. So whether there was walking and biking facilities, what the speed limit is outside of the school, the frequency of bicycle pedestrian involved collisions. And these were criteria that schools were ranked according to, and so this kind of slide shows how each school will get a score and compared with others across the county. And so for time, I might kind of skip through this quick. But school readiness was really determined by having conversations with each of the schools, and there are 90 schools in the county in 30 different school districts. But this also really enabled us to connect with a lot of schools for Safe Routes to School efforts. As I said before, the internal need was really characterized based on publicly available data, and this really, a school would score higher if they had a higher free and reduced lunch percentage of their student body. Also, if their fitness data indicated that the school scored a lot lower on their fitness gram tests. And these were all data that are available locally through our State Department of Education and Ed Data. And our external need really utilized the spatial data component that really looked at whether there were pedestrian and bicycle facilities near the school, what the speed limit was, and frequency of collisions. And so after each school was analyzed per each of these criteria, it was given a score and ranked in comparison to other schools in the county. And so this was a really valuable effort that raised the focus of safe routes to school within our county. And it also enabled the cities and county to work more collaboratively to decide which schools should be prioritized for funding. And it also really enabled us to connect with many rural schools that may have thought that safe routes to school didn't apply to them. And we found a lot of new connections and successes that way. You know, this project also helped form our countywide Safe Routes to School task force that continues to meet and be productive. And it also really made a lot of things happen on the ground. And so some of our successes have been infrastructure improvements and education and encouragement programs funded through Safe Routes to School funding and our California's Active Transportation Program. And so many of the schools that ranked highest on the prioritization tool were prioritized by the jurisdiction that they were, the schools located in, for funding, and those grants were successful. So we had 3 successful grants in the first cycle of our Active Transportation Program funding. And then this last fall, we also secured funding for 6 additional schools and communities in Humboldt County, and in particular for the Hoopa Valley Elementary within the Hoopa Valley Tribe Reservation was funded for a great project along State Highway 96, and many schools within Eureka and Fortuna that were ranked very high. You know, another success is that we had some mixed results in local policy decision making from really framing the need for a focus on walking and biking through a lens of health and transportation equity. But then we started to frame the discussion more around the need for safe routes to school, and we found it's a lot harder to argue with the need for kids to be safe walking and biking to school. And the prioritization tool was also noticed at the state level, and we helped adapt the tool for the California Active Transportation Resource Center's Rural Safe Routes to School Toolkit that is available on their website. So those were our 2 planning projects, or just highlighting 2 that have been successful here locally. And now I'm really going to shift gears to talk about our efforts to ensure that language is less of a barrier for residents to actively participate in transportation projects. So Humboldt County is a rural community with a diverse population, and we also really recognize that families are the experts in their neighborhoods, and that their lived experience should be a valuable bit of information for city and county planners and engineers. And so many metropolitan areas have more resources to ensure active participation in decision making by non-English speakers, but there's less systems in place in Humboldt County for this. And there's many different sectors that are required to have resources for multiple languages, like courts and medical facilities and schools to some degree, but providing for multilingual public meetings is a bit less common. So we really came to this effort as an organization hoping to improve our own effectiveness in planning and working within multilingual settings. And we also often assist local jurisdictions with outreach for transportation projects. So we began to work frequently with local Spanish and Hmong interpreters. And interpretation is a really unique skill, different from being bilingual, that really requires an impartial role, a command of unique vocabulary, and in most cases, the ability to listen and relay information in a near simultaneous way. So just as an example, the woman pictured in the front of this picture, Cele Campos, used to attend her elementary school board meetings with a tape recorder, and take the tapes home for her high school age daughter to interpret for her, and then she'd go back to school board meetings. And so we had an opportunity to help this school have interpretation, and it really enabled many families to participate in safe routes to school decisions at their school. So we've worked with our county health department to develop a needs assessment for language interpretation and translation in Humboldt County. And we've hosted a number of trainings and developed resources to encourage our local organizations to re-examine their policies and procedures. And one of the resources we provided was guidelines for hosting effective multilingual meetings. And I won't be able to touch on some of these things, but I really encourage people to take a look if you want at the website here, northcoasttranslate.org. And as an example of one success, we held our first multilingual walkability assessment at South Fortuna Elementary in early 2015. And walkability assessments or walk audits are on-the-ground observation and workshop time, which really enabled school administrators and parents and city officials to come together and identify safety concerns. And South Fortuna Elementary scored number 3 in the prioritization tool I was speaking about earlier, but it also has some of the highest percentage of walking and biking to school in our county. And so the walk audit was extremely successful, with many parents being able to participate, and a key part of the success was that parents, many of whom walk to school with their kids every day, but English is not their primary language, were able to directly communicate their own lived experience to city staff and decision makers. And fortunately, the input we received at the walk audit was enabled us to be successful with the City of Fortuna in applying for funding to make improvements happen right at the school. So looking ahead, we're continuing to work with local organizations to reduce barriers to local residents participating in transportation decision making. We hope to continue regularly updating our really helpful reports with new updated data. And thank you all for participating in this whole webinar. And I'm sorry I had to rush at the end.
Well, that's all right, Emily. Thank you so much. It was great information to share. And I think that you covered a lot of great topics that a lot of folks had questions about too. So I think that it helps to answer some of those. I'm going to go through really quickly here one discussion question that I had that I think frames things together pretty nicely, and then I'll let you all follow up, hopefully, if you can, with our panelists individually. We are not going to get a whole lot of time for questions, but I am providing some contact information on the screen, so hopefully if we don't answer your question, you can follow up. But the whole time I was thinking about all of this as you're coming through. We had a lot of questions about it on these topics, and my question for all of you, maybe we can go through somewhat quickly, is how, in your mind, are you measuring whether you are properly addressing equity through your projects? I think a lot of folks talk about it as a priority, and there are clearly lots of efforts to move toward more equitable transportation planning and transportation systems. But what sort of indicators do you look at to let you know that yes, we are addressing equity properly in our projects? And Sherry, I'll start with you, and we can just take a few minutes for everyone.
I think I would turn people's attention to our performance measure recent guidebook on bike and pedestrian, and we've also got a performance measure on our TAP funding, the Transportation Alternatives Program funding, where we've asked folks, where we've put information on that subject in there. There's a lot of ways to break it down for some different populations. With surveys, are they accessing the resources and services that they need to get to, and then breaking it down by the different all users, so that we really do have that screen of all users for, as you heard the Indego folks talk about, the different income levels, different ethnic groups, different age groups, different ability groups, from a bike ped perspective. On a larger scale, one of the things we look at when we do reviews of MPOs and work with states is asking them to think about and describe the total investment dollars that are spent on different modes in different parts of the community or a region or a state over time. You know, you can't look at some of these things in a short period of time, but if you kind of aggregate them and look over time, is there a distribution of funds to different parts of the community as opposed to just where a need is? Because in bike and pedestrian, we'll never respond to the need until we make those investments in a more distributed way across the landscape for all neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. Joyce, I'll ask you the same question, I guess, in the context of maybe some of your assessments, and what would you look at to find out if those assessments had properly, addressed equity or incorporated the concerns of equity?
Sorry, I had double mute on. That was one of the things we were looking at, was the income level and these investments that maybe haven't occurred over time, and so I just know that was a criteria that we were using.
Great. I think Kara and Carnisha, you talked a little bit about some of your statistics and your measures and some of the numbers you look at, and you emphasized the need to monitor and evaluate. Anything more you want to add on the measurement topic?
Sure. In addition to the demographics that we revealed, we've done some intercept surveying, which we will continue to do. We do surveys at events that we have within the community to understand who we're reaching, how we're reaching them, and that helps us to make real-time adjustments to better reach folks that we're trying to reach through our social equity efforts. A lot of the measurement of equity is based on the demographic data that we receive, which is both self-reported through Ride Indego, as well as the demographic information that we collect when we're interacting with the public. We do not look at station use at this time to really measure our equity. We understand we're in our infancy stage, and this is a constant exercise that we do to explore how to measure equity within our efforts. And this is something that NACDO is also helping us on in terms of national practices, is trying to create a tool that standardizes how bike share systems across the country measure their equity efforts.
Thank you. And then Emily, just to bring it home, any final thoughts on measuring your success and really knowing whether or not you're accomplishing your goals for equity?
Yeah, we really tried to focus on having the most information and data up front in particular for the Safe Routes to School prioritization tool. So we were beginning to focus our efforts on the schools and communities that really needed those interventions the most. But also for Safe Routes to Schools work, they're a great resource of Safe Routes to School parent surveys through the National Center for Safe Routes that really enable us to track percentage of students asking to walk or bike and to school and having interest in that, and really tracking if our programs and infrastructure improvements are helping to increase students walking and biking. So there's a lot of great tools for helping to assess the measures you're looking at.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your responses to those questions and all the time that you spent presenting today. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for discussion. I do encourage you all to follow up with us, follow up with our panelists if you have other questions, and if we can point you to the right resources, we'd be glad to do that. I want to remind you once again that you will be receiving an email later today with a link to the archive page for this webinar, as well as instructions for downloading your certificate of attendance. I also want to let you know that a very brief survey will appear once the webinar has ended. We would very much appreciate your feedback and your comments on today's presentation. I'd like to say thank you again to Sherry Shaflin, Joyce Newland, Kara Ferrantino, Carnisha Kwashi, Emily Sinkhorn for delivering the presentations today. And thanks to all of you for attending today's PBIC webinar. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.